We are a species with amnesia. We look at the ocean and see a barrier, a void, a wasteland. But the archive remembers a time when the geography of the world was different. Thousands of years ago, the coastlines we know today were miles inland. Entire kingdoms, cultures, and languages now reside in the silent, crushing weight of the continental shelves. This is Chapter 3 of The Aquatic Abyss. Here, we investigate the most persistent ghost in the human imagination, the lost city of Atlantis. Not as a fairy tale of golden domes, but as a biological and geological reality. A warning of how quickly the Earth can reclaim what we have built. The water does not just hide the past, it erases it. The story begins with Plato. In his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, he describes a kingdom beyond the Pillars of Hercules that was larger than Libya and Asia combined. It was a civilization of unparalleled power and hubris, but in a single day and night of misfortune, the island was swallowed by the sea. For centuries, scholars have debated whether Plato was writing a philosophical allegory or a history of a real catastrophe. The archive suggests it was both, a moral warning wrapped in the skin of a biological truth. Atlantis wasn't just a city, it was the first civilization to realize that the Earth is not a stable platform. It is a shifting, violent entity that can turn the very ground beneath your feet into an abyss. To find Atlantis, we must first define its gates. The Pillars of Hercules, traditionally identified as the Strait of Gibraltar, represented the limit of the known world for the ancients. Beyond them lay the Atlantic, a vast, untamed expanse that the Greeks believed was impassable due to the mud and shoals left behind by the sinking island. Imagine the psychological weight of that boundary. To pass the pillars was to leave the safety of the Mediterranean and enter the realm of the deep. Atlantis was the master of that realm, a maritime empire that viewed the ocean not as a threat, but as a highway. They believed they had conquered the water, until the water decided to remind them who truly holds the power. It was the ultimate lesson in human arrogance. In recent years, the archive has focused on a new possibility, the Richat Structure in Mauritania. Known as the Eye of the Sahara, its dimensions and concentric ring structure match Plato's description with eerie precision. Today, it is a dry, desolate wasteland, but 10,000 years ago, this was a lush, water-rich environment. The Sahara was once green, filled with rivers and lakes that flowed into the Atlantic. Could the sinking of Atlantis have been a massive flash flood or a sudden tectonic shift that turned a coastal paradise into a salt-choked basin? The ruins may not be under the waves, but under the sand. The archive reminds us that the desert and the ocean are merely two different ways for the Earth to bury its secrets. To understand the scale of the loss, we must look at the end of the last ice age. Between 12 and 8,000 years ago, the glaciers melted at a rate that is difficult for the modern mind to comprehend. Sea levels rose by over 400 feet. This wasn't a slow, manageable process. It was a series of cataclysmic events, meltwater pulses that triggered massive tsunamis and flooded entire regions in a matter of weeks. Civilizations built on the productive coastal plains were simply erased. Atlantis may be the collective memory of this global trauma, a story passed down through the centuries of the time the world changed and the map was rewritten in water and blood. We are the survivors of a world that was largely submerged. While the world looked to the Mediterranean, the North Sea held a more tangible reality. Doggerland, a vast plain that once connected Great Britain to continental Europe. It was a fertile heartland, home to thousands of people. But as the ice melted and the Storegga slide triggered a massive tsunami, Doggerland was swallowed by the North Sea. Today, fishermen haul up the bones of mammoths and the tools of ancient humans from the seabed. Doggerland is a real Atlantis, a sophisticated culture lost to the rising tides. It proves that the Sunken kingdom is not a myth. It is the inevitable fate of any civilization that builds its foundations on the edge of a changing ocean. The archive is filled with the echoes of these drowned worlds. Off the coast of North Bimini in the Bahamas lies a series of massive limestone blocks, neatly arranged on the seafloor like a road or a wall. To some, it is a natural geological formation. To others, it is a fragment of the Atlantean Empire. The archive looks at the precision of the joints and the scale of the stones and wonders, why do we fight so hard to dismiss the possibility of an ancient precursor? We are terrified of the idea that a civilization more advanced than our own could simply disappear. If they could fall, then we are not as safe as we think. The Bimini Road is a mirror for our own insecurity, a reminder that our monuments are only as permanent as the sea level allows them to be. Halfway around the world, the Yonaguni Monument in Japan tells a similar story. A massive stepped monolith submerged off the coast, featuring sharp right angles, flat surfaces, and what appear to be drainage channels. Is it a product of tectonic fracturing, or the work of a civilization that was lost when the Pacific rose? The archive notes that the scale of the structure is beyond anything human hands of that era were supposed to be capable of. Yet, it sits there in the dark, a silent witness to a pre-flood history that we are only beginning to decode. Atlantis is not a single location, it is a global phenomenon. A recurring pattern of human achievement meeting its limit at the water's edge. But the true horror of the Sunken Kingdom isn't the stone ruins, it's what happened to the people. What if they didn't all die? The archive explores the dark biological theories of adaptation. In the lightless deep, under the crushing weight of miles of water, the human body would have to change in ways that are grotesque to the surface dweller. The loss of pigment, the dilation of the pupils into unblinking black voids, the fusing of the fingers into translucent membranes. This is the Deep One hypothesis. The idea that a civilization lost to the sea didn't just vanish, but became something else. Something adapted to the pressure. Something that still watches us from the shadows of the trenches, waiting for the tides to bring us back to them. Evolution is not always upward. It is merely a response to necessity. For a people trapped in a world without air, the lungs would become vestigial. The skin would become a sensory organ for detecting the faintest vibrations in the water column. The beauty of the Atlantean would be replaced by the efficiency of the deep-sea predator. They would become the very sirens and tritons of our myths, biological anomalies born of necessity. We imagine them as kings of the deep, but the archive suggests they are more like the anglerfish, creatures of the dark, defined by their hunger and their absolute isolation from the world of light. To see an inhabitant of the Sunken Kingdom would be to look into the face of our own horrific potential. We find shadows of their technology in the most unexpected places. The Antikythera mechanism, recovered from a shipwreck in 1901, is a complex computer of gears and dials used to track astronomical positions. It dates to the 2nd century BC, but its sophistication is 1,000 years ahead of its time. Where did this knowledge come from? The archive suggests it is a remnant of a much older mathematical tradition, a fragment of the logic that once ruled Atlantis. We are finding the scattered pieces of a puzzle that we no longer have the frame for. These rusted gears are the fingerprints of a civilization that had mastered the heavens before the ocean claimed them. They serve as a reminder that technological progress is not linear. It can be interrupted by the tide. Plato tells us that Atlantis fell because they turned toward unrighteous ambition and power. They became a parasite on the world, forgetting that they were part of a larger ecosystem. The catastrophe was not an accident, it was a corrective. This is the recurring theme of the archive. The more we attempt to dominate the natural world, the more violently the world responds. Atlantis is the archetype for our modern age, a global empire built on technology and expansion, blissfully unaware that its foundations are built on a fault line. We look at the sunken city and think of a mystery to be solved, but we should be looking at it as a prophecy of our own future. The ocean is simply waiting for us to make the same mistake. Imagine standing in the center of an Atlantean temple, miles beneath the surface. The silence is absolute, save for the low, rhythmic pulse of the currents. The statues of their gods are now homes for corals and polyps. The halls that once echoed with the debates of philosophers now hold only the cold, unthinking weight of the water. This is the finality of the Sunken Kingdom. It is a world where human meaning has been stripped away, replaced by the indifferent processes of the deep. The ruins are not empty, they are inhabited by the sea itself. To visit Atlantis is to witness the ultimate victory of biology over art. It is a place where every carved stone is being slowly ground back into sand by the patient power of the tides. The archive holds reports of ships that still encounter the ghosts of the sunken lands. Navigators in the Sargasso Sea describe islands that appear on radar but disappear when approached. Pilots in the Bermuda Triangle report strange magnetic anomalies that suggest massive stone structures beneath the waves. Are these just glitches in our technology, or is the presence of Atlantis still felt in the electromagnetic field of the planet? The Sunken Kingdom may be more than a physical place. It may be a disruption in the fabric of the Earth's memory. A scar on the seafloor that continues to bleed into our world, luring the curious and the arrogant into the same dark water that claimed the kings of old. Why do we search for Atlantis? Why are we so obsessed with a world that was lost before we even learned to write our own histories? Because we are looking for our ancestors. We are looking for the proof that we are not the first to reach the summit, and we are not the first to fall. The search for the Sunken Kingdom is the search for a map of our own survival. If we can find the mistake that Atlantis made, perhaps we can avoid it. But the archive notes a darker motivation. We are drawn to the abyss because it is our origin. We came from the water, and every story of a sunken city is a subconscious yearning to return to the weightless dark of the womb. We are not searching for a city, we are searching for home. The maps of the 16th and 17th centuries frequently included Atlantis as a matter of course. It was a cartographic certainty, a missing piece of the global puzzle that helped explain the similarities between the cultures of the Old World and the New. How could the pyramids of Egypt and the pyramids of Mexico be so similar? The archive suggests the answer lies in the Mid-Atlantic Bridge. Atlantis was the cultural source, the progenitor of the human story. When it sank, it scattered its survivors like seeds across the earth, carrying fragments of its forbidden knowledge to every shore. We are the inheritors of a shattered legacy, living in the ruins of an empire that we can no longer see. Every ancient myth of a great flood is a record of the day the bridge was broken. Look into the unblinking eye of a submerged statue. It doesn't see the water, it sees the world that used to be. It remembers the sun. It remembers the sound of voices and the warmth of the air. But now, it is part of the silence. This is the true tragedy of Atlantis, the loss of memory. A civilization that was the envy of the gods is now a footnote in a forgotten dialogue. The archive holds the last remnants of its story, preserved in the ink of rare manuscripts and the scars on the ocean floor. But the sea is an efficient editor. It is slowly erasing the last traces of the Atlantean name, ensuring that eventually the abyss will be all that remains. Silence is the only witness that never lies. The ocean is the ultimate gatekeeper. It holds 80% of the Earth's history in its depths, and it has no intention of sharing it. We believe that with our satellites and our sonar, we have mapped the world. But we have only mapped the surface. Atlantis remains out of reach, not because it is a myth, but because it is sovereign territory. It belongs to the deep. As we push further into the abyssal plains, we are the ones who are out of place. We are the ghosts in their world. The Sunken Kingdom is not a puzzle to be solved, but a boundary to be respected. It is the place where the human story ends and the planetary story begins. And the planet has a very long memory. The sea is the one place where we are genuinely out of our depth. A world that covers most of our planet but remains entirely alien to us. The mermaid, the kraken, and the lost city are all symbols of this fundamental truth. They are the faces we put on the unknown to keep our fear at bay. But the unknown doesn't care about our symbols. It operates on a timeline of billions of years, slowly churning, slowly evolving. The sunken kingdom is still there, moving with the currents, its ruins being slowly ground back into the primordial soup. It is the ocean's way of saying that nothing is ever truly lost, only transformed into something that we can no longer understand. We are the intruders. The abyss is the master. The archive remains open, but for now, we must return to the light. The story of Atlantis is a story of our own fragility, a reminder that the ground beneath our feet is only a temporary reprieve from the weight of the water. Chapter 3 is complete, but the aquatic abyss still has secrets to reveal. What waits in the abyssal plains? What light shines in the absolute dark? We will return. Until then, keep your eyes on the horizon and never forget the weight that pulls at your heels. The tide is coming in, and the truth is never far behind. Good night, for now. Sleep well if you can. The water is rising, and the archive remembers everything.